Ladies and gentlemen, hello, this is Debo over at Land Say Go, and today we have another day of exciting Throne of Eldraine spoilers for you. So let's go ahead and just break it on down. We got a lot to cover here, and we don't want to have any time to waste. So we've got Galenby, Holy Warrior, 4 and a green for a 4/4 giant knight. And it cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and then it has adamant, so if 3 green mana were spent to cast it, then it also comes in with a +1/+1 counter. Now, this card is not going to see any constructed play. It's just a good limited or draft sealed bomb, and you'll definitely play it in those formats, but you likely will not be playing this in any constructed format whatsoever. We also have Bear Suplex, which is 3 and a green for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then it fights with a creature you don't control. Again, it has adamant, and if 3 green mana were used to cast this, then the creature you control also gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is good in limited and sealed, but not necessarily again for constructed. It's going to be your good green removal in those formats, and the fact that you can give your creature indestructible is really good. Being able to, use a 4/4 to kill a 4/4, and you get to keep your creature behind. Very, very good stuff. Now, the thing with this, if it only was instant speed, it maybe would have a place in standard, but because it's sorcery speed, I definitely don't see it going anywhere. Return from Clouds. This card's really interesting. It's 3 and a green for an instant. Put target card from your graveyard into your hand, then put another target card from your graveyard on top of your library, and then exile it. And then again, adamant. If you have 3 green mana used to cast this spell, then you can return both cards to your hand instead. So what's really interesting about this is mono green now has a way to basically regrowth 2 things to their hand at instant speed. So I could definitely see something like that, just another thing that you can use for like fine finality type of an effect. But this one you can do it more easily in mono green, and then. But either way, you could maybe potentially run both of those. But the thing is this also hits non-creature spells as well. So you can hit planeswalkers that go in there. So you can get back your Nissa. It can hit your removal spells if you are splashing other colors or anything like that. So this card's really interesting. I could see it seeing some play, especially since it's instant speed. But I think it's just gonna be 1 or 2 of, if that, and or maybe more of a sideboard card than anything else. Lockmere Serpent, 4 blue and a black. For a 7/7 with flash. Now this card's got a lot of other text on it. Let's go ahead and just look at it. It's really powerful. You have blue, sacrifice an island, and then it can't be blocked this turn. Black, sacrifice a swamp, you gain 1 life and draw a card. And then blue-black, exile the 5 target cards from an opponent's graveyard, and then return the serpent from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So the fact that the retrieval cost is only 2 mana is very powerful. Being able to exile things from your opponent's graveyard is extremely impactful. And then the fact that you can just pay a blue and sack the same islands that you used to pay that blue, so that way this can't be blocked. So it's a 7/7 unblockable. Amazing. And then black, sacrifice a swamp, you gain a life and draw a card, so you're refilling your hands. And then just having the ability to flash this out on your opponent's turn and then swing in for 7 the next turn. This card is going to be a control finisher. It's very powerful, and I definitely think that it's going to see play. This card is very, very good. Trail of Crumbs. It's an enchantment for 1 and a green, and it says when Trail of Crumbs enters the battlefield, create a food token. And then whenever you sacrifice a food, you may pay 1. And if you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent from among them and put it into your hand. And then the rest goes in the bottom in any order. Since there's only one other one, that's the one that goes to the bottom. So this card is actually pretty good if you're playing the food style deck. Being able to, one, create a food when it enters the battlefield, and then also have an ability that whenever you sacrifice a food for whatever reason, you can pay that 1 mana and then just be able to put things into your hand. You're basically drawing a card, but it gets around things like Narset because you're not technically drawing a card. So this card I think is really good. It's definitely going to see play in that food list at the very least as a sideboard card against control. But I think that's going to be really good. Curious Pair. It's 1 and a green for a 1/3 that has adventure, and the adventure is a sorcery, and it's commissary treats for 1 green, and it says create a food token. So for your turn 1 play, you can cast that, create a food token, and then in turn 2 play, you can cast the creature from exile. So it's a really interesting dichotomy between the two. This may see some play. It is a human. It's a human peasant. It's just an interesting creature type there, and I could see this maybe in some sort of the food synergistic style list. It's just another way for you to create food, and if you kind of treat food a little bit like energy, this might be kind of like your 1 mana get your energy type of a thing. So I can't remember what that card's called. Anyways, that I could maybe see this seeing play. The adventure side, or the creature side after you cast the adventure spell is really good. The fact that you can cast it from exile makes this card like you're drawing a free spell. So definitely up on these adventure mechanics, and I think it's something to really consider for that style of list. All right, we have Covetous Urge, 4 Dimir hybrid mana, so blue black blue black blue black blue black. Yeah, that's a tongue twister. You try it. It's a sorcery. Choose target opponent. That player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from that player's graveyard or hand, and then exile it. And as long as it remains exiled, you may cast that card. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. So it's kind of like a Gonti, except it's from their hand or graveyard. The fact that it says graveyard makes this actually playable. How playable is another story. It's kind of hard, because if it were to say allow you to do it twice, it would be a little bit better for the mana cost. Like Gonti gave you a Death Toucher along with it, right? This just gives you the ability to get it from their hand or the graveyard. Now, if it was uncounterable, maybe it could see more play. But as it stands right now, it can be countered. It's really hard to cast. It's really hard to cast, and you know the effect I just don't think warrants having the 4 mana cost for it. Now, it could be good. We'll have to see what the format ends up shaking like. Maybe at least as a sideboard card or something like that. I doubt you're going to see a much main board played with this card. Clack Bridge Troll. This card is awesome. We have a 5 mana, 3 black black for an 8/8 with trample and haste. And it says when it enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 3/0/1 white goat creature tokens. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, tap it. You gain 3 life and you draw a card. So not only do you get benefit if your opponent is sacrificing their own things to keep it from attacking, but if they don't do that, you get a 8/8 trample with haste. So it seems pretty good. I'd be really curious to know how this plays. It seems like more of like a build around me card right now. But so long as we can get something that can wipe our opponent's board, or if we can get like a Heartless Summoning type of effect, or plague winds, or something like that that can kill creature tokens immediately, then you may want to consider just having to build around this just a little bit more. It's a very good card. I'm not sure how much it's going to see play, but it definitely could if you're like in a hardcore black aggro list, or maybe a black control list where you're just controlling your opponent's board, and this is like your finisher, your top end finisher. And then we have Feasting Troll King. 2 green, 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 green. So 6 mana for a 7/6 with Vigilance and Trample. So the power creep is real for sure. We are seeing these beefy bodies on these lower mana costs, and then on top of that, it has Vigilance and Trample plus even more abilities. We have when Feasting Troll enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, create 3 food. So instead of reanimating it, if you cast it from your hand, you get 3 food. And then you can sacrifice 3 foods and return Feasting Troll from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, and then you can activate this only during your turn. So basically what that gets around is that you don't reanimate it and then get 3 food, and you just constantly keep reanimating it that way. But the fact that you get to reanimate this at least once is pretty dang amazing. I mean, that's a beefy body to be able to reanimate. So I'm very up on this card. I think mono green or green beats is definitely gonna be wanting to play something like this. I'm just in awe with it. I think it's gonna be really good. Robber of the Rich, 1 in a red for a human archer rogue. And it has reach and haste. There's a lot of haste creatures in this set, a lot of them. Whenever Robber of the Rich attacks, if defending player has more cards in hand than you, exile the top card of their library. During any turn you attacked with a rogue. That's really interesting there. You may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. And the Robber of the Rich is a 2/2. This is just another way for red to get some sort of a card advantage. This is, I think, going to be really good. It looks like this is the red mythic of the set. It's powerful. It's got reach. It's got haste. It gives you card advantage. It's a 2/2 for 2 with upside. This card's going to be definitely playable in red deck wins. It's going to be definitely playable in a rogue style of list. So I'm excited to see what more rogues we can get. We have Wildborn Preserver. This card is really cool. I like this one a lot. Wildborn Preserver is 1 in a green for a 2/2 with flash. It's an elf archer. A lot of archers too. It's got flash and reach. And then whenever another non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X +1/+1 counters on Wildborn Preserver. So we still have things like March of the Multitudes. We have another creature that has a very similar effect, that whenever a token enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I think if you were to play both those 2 drops, the Wildborn Preserver here and then that other one, and then you play a bunch of token creators, you can actually flood the board with these huge, powerful creatures, and then also an army of 1/1s. So I think that's going to be really an interesting way to look at the deck, and I think it'd be kind of cool. This is also just good in like a I don't know, elf ball type thing. This is an elf, and you could play like Pelt Collector turn 1, this turn 2, and then just start playing more elves, and then they're non-human. So then the elves would oftentimes create mana. You can use their mana to then be able to pay the X cost for this, to then be able to put +1/+1 counters on it and beef it up. I think it could potentially see some play. I'd be really interested to see if Modern has any play for this in Modern Elves. Being able to just use your mana resources to just keep buffing up one creature, and then when that goes away, you have a handful of cards. So that's kind of like one of the things that I'm thinking about with this. I think it's neat. I'd like to see where it can go. We have Hypnotic Sprite. For blue, we have a 2/1 with flying, but this also has adventure for 2 in a blue and instant speed. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 3 or less. So again, this seems pretty great. If mono blue is still a thing, then you can cast this for 3 mana. You counter a spell. It goes into exile. You can then on your next turn or whatever pay blue to then get a 2/1 creature with flying. Flyers matters is still going to be a thing, so having something like this I think is a really good piece in a list like that. I think this will see standard play, and at the very least it'll see sideboard play, but I definitely think this is even main board contendable. I'm very up on that card. I think it's very good. Weasel back red cap for a single red. It's a 1/1, and you can pay 2 to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. It's a goblin knight, so interesting that this is a knight. So it fits in goblins and in knights, and we can, it's another good one mana spell. It's a good 1-drop with a pump ability. You can swing in on turn 3 with 3 power and deal 3 damage to your opponent. For however much mana you have available, something like this in limited could be really good. You swing in, they don't block it, you pump it like 6 times. I mean, that's a lot of damage right there. So I think that this card's gonna be good in limited. I think it's gonna maybe see some play in very specific lists in standard. I think it could be something pretty good. We did have something very similar though. They did not see a lot of play, and that was at least it's still legal in the format. And with Mentor, it has Mentor and has this exact same ability. So I'd be curious to know if maybe these two can get paired up, and then they start feeding off each other or something like that. Maybe, who knows? Roving Keep, 7 mana for an artifact wall. It's a 5/7 with Defender, and it says pay 7. It gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, and it can attack this turn as though it did not have Defender. So this is just a good limited bomb. 7 mana. Maybe we'll find some ways to reduce that cost. Maybe this is something that you could play with like Ugin in standard. Maybe there is still a wall defender style strategy. So I'd be curious to know how well that this can maybe convert over to standard. It is an artifact, so you can tutor it up with Karn if you need to. So there's definitely some interesting things you can do there. The fact that you have to pay 7 every single time to be able to attack with it is not great, but in limited or draft or sealed, it's one of those things where you're paying that 7, you're probably not going to be casting anything that turn anyways. Maybe you don't have anything in hand, so then you get the swing of the 7/7 with trample. So that's probably where this is mainly going to see play, is in limited, but who knows? I doubt it's going to see much constructed play. We have Worthy Knight for 1 and a white. It's a 2/2, and it says whenever you cast a night spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So Jeremy saw this card, and it was just with him. He just loved it. Pair that with Hero of Precinct 1, and you start playing a bunch of multicolored knights, and then all of a sudden you're just flooding the board with tokens along with your knights, and there's a lot of really cool synergy that you can do. Definitely like this card. I think we could have a really interesting tokens list, and especially since we still have like Divine Visitation in the format to create 4/4 angels whenever a token enters the battlefield. We've got a lot of really cool stuff that we could be doing with it for sure. Sirecar the Bold, 3 red for a 3/3. It's a human knight. It's a legendary creature, and then it says whenever Sirecar the Bold or an instant or sorcery you control deals damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, and then tap. It deals 1 damage to any target, and it's a 3/3. So this card, it's gonna be it's one of those uncommons. There's an uncommon cycle of legendary creatures. It's gonna be cool like commander to build around. It's gonna be a decent limited play, but it's not gonna see very much constructed play. Maybe someone will try to jank something out with it, but I very much doubt it. It's likely just gonna be kind of a commander staple for wanting to have card advantage in red. So if you want card advantage in red, this is probably the commander for you. But other than that, I don't think it's going to see much standard play, if any. Claim the Firstborn. For a single red, it's a sorcery. Gain control of target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. So a 1 mana threaten effect. That seems good. Sure, it's creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, but there are creatures with huge power for just 3 mana. So I definitely think that this could see some really interesting play. You'll probably end up playing something like this in limited and sealed, and maybe even main board or sideboard in constructed. Being able to steal something and then maybe sacrifice it to something else, I think it could be something to really consider. You know, we still have like Judith in the format. We've got other things to. We've recently gotten free sacrifice outlets, but they're one-off type things. So maybe having a bunch of threatened type spells plus some sacrifice outlets. You steal your opponent's stuff. You swing in. You then sacrifice it to get value. That's probably something you can do with a card like this. Searing barage. Searing barrage. 4 and a red. It's an instant. It deals 5 damage to target creature, and then adamant. If 3 red was used, it deals 3 damage to that creature's controller as well. So, not going to see a lot of standard play or anything like that. It's a good removal spell and limited, and that's definitely where you're going to see this more often than not. Kinrith, the Returned King. This card's amazing. It's so good. It's a very good commander as well. It's a human noble, legendary creature, 4 and a white. Red, all creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn. So, not even your creatures. All creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn. So you can activate this on your opponent's turn, giving all their creatures haste, so you can make some really political deals with it. I think that's hilarious. You can pay 1 in a green to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. You can play 2 in white to give target player to have them gain 5 life. 3 in a blue, target player draws a card, and then 4 in a black, target creature card from a graveyard goes onto the battlefield under its owner's control. And this is a 5/5 for 5. So this just has like everything. You can buff. It's not only really good to build around for yourself, but it's also like a good group hug style build around for commander, where you can just like, I'll give your creatures +1/+1 counters, and then I'll give your creatures haste, and I'll return your creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. But it all benefits me in some weird way that I built my deck around. So I think this card is really cool. And also just having all those effects for yourself are really powerful. And yeah, I don't think it's going to see any standard play whatsoever. But I think it's neat. I think it's a really cool card. Outlaws Merriment. Now this is a card that's definitely going to see standard play. Absolutely will see standard play. For 1 red, white, you have an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose 1 at random. Create a red and white creature token with those characteristics. 3/1 human warrior with trample and haste. 2/1 human cleric with lifelink and haste. 1/2 human rogue with haste, and when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to any target. So, I'd like you to point out, this is 4 mana. Divine Visitation is 5 mana, right on curve with one another. This effect does also stack, so if you have multiples of these out there, you get to have potentially, say, 4 3/1s or 4 2/1s, or any combination there within. So this card is really good. I'm just floored by it. The fact that it just keeps happening over and over and over again. Your opponent is going to have some sort of removal spell for it. It is extremely powerful, and being able to pair it with something like Divine Visitation is going to be exceedingly good. So we're looking at like Mardu tokens right now. We have Dreadhorde Invasion still in the format. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be doing to make a bunch of tokens that could just flood the board. And then if we turn them all into 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance, don't even get me started. That looks like a lot of fun. Charming Prince, 1 and a white for a 2/2. We have another hate bear here. We've actually seen a couple of them here. This is a human noble, and when Charming Prince enters the battlefield, choose 1, scry 2, which is good. You gain 3 life, which could be relevant against, red burn or something like that. And then an effect that I've been waiting to see for a very long time on a creature: exile another target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. That right there is going to be really good. Really, really good. So if somebody steals something that you that you own. You play this, you can bounce it from their side of the battlefield back to your side. You get whatever enter the battlefield effects it had. Really, really powerful. If you just need to double up on ETB effects, this is another way that you can do it. Plus, it gives you a 2/2 body that you can still reanimate, you can attack with, you can do whatever you need to do with it. There's a lot of really cool things that you can be doing with Charming Prince. So I'm excited to try to build around them and see what we can do to break them. It definitely seems like a very powerful ability. Scold Knocker Ogre for 3 in a red. It's a 4/3 ogre, and when it deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random, and if that player does, they draw a card. Probably not going to see much play in standard. Probably you will play this in limited. I mean, the fact that it gives your opponent the ability to draw a card is not that great, but having them to discard a card at random is really good. So it could be the bomb or the removal spell that they've been holding and waiting for in order to be able to cast it, and then it doesn't matter, it just forces them to discard it. So definitely like that. We do have some like discard synergy type things that you may be able to utilize with this, but I doubt it's going to see any standard play. It's definitely much more of a limited card. Well, guys, that was everything at the moment for day 2 of Throne of Eldraine spoilers. Again, my name is Debo over at landsego.com. I appreciate you guys checking out the video, and be sure to check back tomorrow for another one covering even more of the spoilers. Again, this is Debo at landsego.com. You can follow us over on our Twitter at landsego1. Facebook is the sideboard, or just look up Landsego. Obviously the YouTube here, which is Landsego, and then we also have a Twitch. We stream 5 nights a week, Saturday through Wednesday, starting at 9 p.m. Central, and we do that every single week, and that is twitch.tv/Landsego. Alright guys, my name's Debo. We can't do this without you. Appreciate the support, and I'll talk to you soon.